The school year is ending and education reform is beginning.
Once we're perfect, then we don't have to change that. But right now, we don't have nearly enough kids performing nearly as well as they're capable of.
Changes in the classroom mean changes in teaching the next generation of teachers.
We have specific requirements we have to meet in terms of how we prepare teachers and what kind of things we include in order to be able to get our teachers to be certified by the state.
The next steps in education reform. This is Arizona Week. Hello and welcome to Arizona Week. I'm Christopher Conover in for Lorraine Rivera. Last week, Arizona's 3 state universities held their graduation ceremonies. This week, public schools across the state are sending their seniors out into the world. As the school year ends and we begin our look at the state of education, let's first look at some numbers. The latest statistics from the U.S. Department of Education show Arizona has an 80% high school graduation rate. That's just below the national average. According to the Arizona Department of Education, the state has nearly 250 school districts and more than 2,000 schools. Overall enrollment in the K-12 public school system is a little more than 1 million students. The largest enrollment numbers are found in the first grade. Arizona also has more than 500 charter schools with about 145,000 students. Nearly 400 groups hold the charters for those institutions. Charter schools are often a part of education reform conversations. To talk about where Arizona's K-12 system is heading, we sat down with former State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Lisa Graham-Keegan. She's also an education advisor to Governor Doug Ducey. Let's start on a larger picture, if you will, and we'll get to A for Arizona. But we hear, as we often do with changes in the executive office of the governor, calls for education reform. We heard that call 6 years ago from then Governor Brewer and wanted to go towards Common Core. Now Governor Ducey at his leadership conference was talking about reforming education. As the former top educator in the state, are changes every couple of years, major reforms, is that good for education?
Well, it is until we're getting everybody up to the A level, Christopher. Yeah, once we're perfect, then we don't have to change that. But right now, we don't have nearly enough kids performing nearly as well as they're capable of, so we got to keep pushing urgently.
How does the government push urgently? You've sat in the seat, you've also advised Governor Ducey, and you're working on this A for Arizona program. How does the state move education forward? We always seem to be down at the bottom.
Well, I think it's important to know, yeah, our funding is pretty low. Our performance is below par. We've slipped way below the midline, unfortunately. I think what's important, Christopher, is to take the schools who are unquestionably succeeding and to study them and to make sure that what you do is you first of all secure those schools and those leaders. So make sure they can continue their work, expand their work, infect others. And that's what Governor Ducey is talking about. So I think that's the first order of business, is to identify who's doing this really well and make sure you make your first investment there and get those schools or those practices to expand.
One of the programs, it sounds like the perfect lead-in for your program that is looking at that, is A for Arizona. You're working with the Arizona Chamber of Commerce on this. Explain a little bit what this program is.
The program is actually a partnership between the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and the Tucson Hispanic Chamber. And we are very focused on schools that serve primarily low-income students, so over 60% poverty in the school. And those schools are at the A level as designated by the state. So Arizona has about 850 very low-income schools out of 2,040 schools, public schools total. Of those 850, only about 8% of them are at A. And we work with about 100 schools because we also include those schools who are clearly going to get there. You can tell by their GAIN scores. These are phenomenal leaders. This is the toughest work in American education. Taking a very low-income school, getting it up to the A level, making sure those kids can make their choice for what comes next, college or work or military. The schools are primarily in southern Arizona. It's very interesting. Lots of these schools in Tucson, lots of them on the border. So we're trying to learn from those leaders and develop policies that would allow them to expand their work to replicate their work, both district schools and charter schools. You've got a lot of empty school buildings around and a lot of wait lists on district schools, like in Tucson Unified. We ought to be replicating these best low-income A models into those empty buildings and make a lot of students make a big difference in their lives.
I know this is a relatively new program, but have you identified some things that these schools have in common, these very successful schools, even though they have low-income students? Is there anything that's jumping up right away that makes them successful?
Absolutely, over and over again. The teachers in the school and the principal at the school. Our website is a4az.org, and I'd love to have people go, not so much to learn about us, although I'd love that. Our schools are listed, and we have links to these schools all over Arizona, and you can go by county, so you could look up Pima County and go congratulate these leaders. What they are is focused. So they've made the decision that these kids are capable of very challenging work. That's the first order of business, is to decide. After that, they spend more time, Christopher. They come early, they stay late. We think they're adding as much as 30 extra days to the school calendar in terms of how much extra time their teachers give. Some of that is instructional, after school, Saturday school. Also during the summer, these teachers come together without compensation and they plan. They look at their data, they restructure what they were doing. It's an incredible amount of work. It's nothing about this is easy. It's missionary work. We're going to have to invest in these schools and not make it experimental, right? You can't scale sort of missionary zeal. You got to be serious about what that took and then invest in that. And so we aim to support policies that will do that.
Having sat at the top, been superintendent of public instruction, how do the governor, how does the superintendent, how do they pass that type of zeal along to the teachers in the classroom who are working hard, but they're not at the A schools? How do they get that zeal, as you called it, institution-wide in the K-12 system?
Such a great question, Christopher. So the one thing we know about Governor Ducey has set something up called the Achievement District. We call it an achievement zone because people get confused about a district. This would be a preferential treatment by the state. So either a further investment in these schools monetarily, making it easier for them to expand. But one of the requirements that the governor is talking about to be in that district is a willingness to partner with schools that are not at A. So they're very clear when you talk to them in the governor's office that they mean to infect others with this kind of spirit. You don't need to incentivize A schools to grow or be great. They get up to do it in the morning. This is what they do. But you do have to convince schools that are not there yet that they could be, and they need somebody to learn from. Vail School District works with 100 schools around the state, not just in their area. They're working all over the state. We have a bunch of networks. The Academies of Math and Science that are in Tucson, Mexicayo in Tucson, started in Nogales. Started with, and that leader was in the school district. They still work together. So great educators by their nature are collaborative. They are reaching out all the time. And I would say to any school that is low income and wants to get there, go look on our website. You'll find a partner pretty close to you, and I would get in touch.
You mentioned charter schools. We hear the governor talk about charter schools. Are they the ultimate answer to education in Arizona, or are they a piece?
They're a piece, and Christopher, you don't hear the governor talk about charter schools. You hear him talk about public schools. And he's very interesting. In his office, he won't let you make the distinction. He talks about public schools, district and charter. His achievement zone is specifically for all public schools. I've been in the room when he's talked to experts around the country about public schools. He is very frustrated that people think he's about public charter schools. He loves excelling charter schools, just like he loves excelling district schools. And all of his policies deal with public schools equally, regardless of whether they're district, charter, magnet. He's going to treat them the same. I think people will get very clear on that.
We've seen in recent months a little bit of a dust-up politically, I guess, between the superintendent of public instruction and the governor. Does this slow down progress? Is there a conflict of who's in charge of education?
I don't think there's a legal conflict. I think it's pretty clear that the State Board of Ed is usually in charge, and those of us who have been superintendent before have gotten together and talked about this, and we said to people, you know, you had no idea how much power we did not have. I mean, the job is really a function of relationship with the State Board. The power is mostly invested in that board. The superintendent certainly can be a voice to focus people, and it's always helpful when people are on the same page. So it's a little bit of a distraction when they're not, but I don't think it's holding our school leaders back. What will hold them back is our inability to support them, get behind them. So hopefully we can get going on that really quickly.
All right, well, thanks for sitting down with us, talking about A for Arizona, and giving a little insider's look at educational leadership overall.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
This year's budget contained its share of cuts in education. But Republicans say they added money to classrooms and cut administration. Some educators call that just a numbers trick, and cuts are cuts. Kathy Prather runs the JTED program for the Sunnyside School District. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. Let's talk about JTED. In this latest budget, there are cuts to JTED and career and technical education. What does that mean long term for these programs?
Well, the year after next, we are expecting to see at least a 50% cut to the funding that supports these programs. So in the 2016-17 school year, 50% of the funding will be gone.
These programs, if you can a little bit, explain to people in case they don't really know what they are, why these programs are different than your normal high school classes and why they're important.
These programs include engineering, biotechnology, computerized manufacturing, 3D design, and these programs are the programs of the future. These are the programs that have been set up in response to workforce development. These are high tech, these are expensive, and these programs are critically important to the future of our state.
These just aren't programs that kids get into, though, so that when they graduate from high school, they go right into the workforce. Granted, a lot of kids do that, but not all of them. Some of them go on to community colleges, four-year universities, correct?
These programs actually do help prepare students to go on to college. These are high-level, high-tech, rigorous programs. They aren't what you might have recalled from previous vocational programs of the past. These are highly technical and are in response to the technical needs of workforce development in Arizona.
We were talking before we sat down in here, and you were relating the story of an engineering student here in southern Arizona who's in the JTED program through the Sunnyside Unified School District, who's being recruited by colleges and universities.
As well, and he is currently an intern at a local manufacturing company that specializes in aerospace, and he has actually developed a design for a bolt that is actually going into production and being put on airplanes. And so in addition to being recruited by higher ed, he's also being recruited by this aerospace firm and others as well.
And he designed that bolt while he was in high school. It's not like he was in college or out of school. He was a high school student who came up with a new design.
Absolutely. And in high school, as a senior, he was able to obtain his SolidWorks CSWA, which is an associate certification, as well as a CSWP professional certification. So he does have the skills and qualities, and that's why he's being so heavily recruited.
You said he obtained some professional certifications. Is that normal part of the curriculum with the JTED and CTE, that the kids, if appropriate and they can pass, can get actual professional certifications?
Absolutely. These are nationally and internationally recognized certifications, and they are part of all of these programs. We have SolidWorks, we have NIMS, which is for metalworking and precision machining, and so many of the CTE JTED programs do offer industry certifications. And in our district alone, in the Sunnyside Unified School District, we have hundreds of students that have obtained these certifications this year from Microsoft and NIMS and SolidWorks and many others.
Let's talk about what everybody always likes to talk about, retention and graduation rates. Do these programs help keep kids in school?
Absolutely. The data shows that these programs graduate 98% of the students. So these programs increase the graduation rate, they reduce the dropout rate. And also, these programs have been shown to increase the persistence rate of these students completing higher ed degrees and certificates.
So it really runs down the road once they get out of school. If they go on to a community college, a four-year university, they're more likely to stay.
Absolutely, and be successful and complete their degree.
The cuts you said are coming not this coming school year, since we're wrapping up, much to the happiness of the students, the
Yes.
current one. They don't come in the fall, they come further down the road. Is there planning in the works now, or is it a cross your fingers and hope the money comes back before the cuts come in?
That's a great question, because right now we are beginning to strategize and look at what we need to do to try to carry over enough funds to have these programs survive in the 2016-17 school year. So in our school district, Sunnyside District, we have cut 3 programs already in anticipation. It is a strategy because we do need some of these programs to survive. But in the long run, after a couple of years, if these cuts are not reversed, many of these programs, if not all of these programs, will be gone in several years.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. What's the future look like? Do JTED programs get money from industry also, and is that somewhere you can turn, or do you really need those state dollars?
We do receive support from industry in donations, but it's nowhere near what we would need to sustain these programs. So it does help. We are receiving responses from industry for these programs, but it's not enough.
And we were talking also earlier about some of the expenses for your average classroom teacher. We all know what your average classroom looks like, but the JTED and CTE classrooms have big pieces of expensive equipment that obviously have to be bought and kept up to date so these kids can get out and get in the workforce or into the higher level university classes.
Absolutely. These are expensive programs. They are a great return on investment, though. To have students go out and go on to college or go into the workforce with skills in 3D printing, CNC, manufacturing, design, it's really critically important that they have access to the higher technology, the latest technology, the cutting edge technology, if Arizona wants to stay competitive with its workforce.
How many kids are taking part in this statewide?
Statewide, 90,000 students are involved in these programs. These cuts are really targeted to the satellite programs at the public high schools. And so of those 90,000, 90% of those students take their coursework at the high schools. And these are the programs that are being threatened with a 50% cut in funding in 16-17.
All right, well, thanks for coming in and explaining to us about the JTED and CTE programs.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Education reform often means changes in how teachers teach. We sat down with Bruce Johnson, a department head and professor in the College of Education at the University of Arizona, to talk about those changes. We've heard about changes, wholesale changes possibly coming from the Capitol in the coming years to education. As someone who educates and prepares the future educators, how does that change what you do and what the College of Education has to do when elected officials in the Capitol make policy changes?
Depending on what the policy is, sometimes it affects us a great deal. So we have specific requirements we have to meet in terms of how we prepare teachers and what kind of things we include in order to be able to get our teachers to be certified by the state. And so every time there are changes, it affects our curriculum, obviously. So as an example, a few years ago, the structured English immersion classes became required by the state. And so we had to bring those into our teacher preparation program, which causes all kinds of shifting around to make sure that we can do that and all the other things we need to do. So they definitely affect our programs.
2 decades ago, I went through College of Education at Florida State. I have a feeling that things have changed when it comes to preparing future teachers. How have they changed?
So I also went through a teacher preparation program here in Arizona, up at NAU actually in the late 70s, and they've changed a lot since my time. And one of the big things that's changed, I think, is the field nature of our program. So for instance, all of our teacher preparation programs in our college are entirely field-based. And so our students, for instance, in our elementary or early childhood or cross-categorical special ed program, spend their last 3 semesters in our programs entirely out in schools. So we teach our classes out there. When they're not with us in a class at the local school, they're working with teachers' classrooms. So the amount of field work they do has greatly expanded, and also the way that it's linked to our coursework has really improved as well. And so rather than just kind of sending people to watch what's going on in a classroom, every single one of our courses has specific assignments that get done in their field placements. So those are two big ways that it's really changed.
That is a big change. When I went through the program, again, in Florida more than 2 decades ago, we had one semester of what we used to call student teaching. So
Sure.
big change now, 3 semesters, that's an academic year and a half.
Right, right. It is a big change. People still do student teaching, but by the time they get to student teaching, they're already very familiar with being a part of a school culture and knowing how things work and how they can contribute and be comfortable working with kids. So they really get that student teaching immersion means something different to them.
Is there a shortage of teachers, or do we have plenty?
If you look at the number of people in Arizona who are qualified to be teachers, we have no shortage. But in reality, many of those people are not teaching. So there are a couple of reasons why. One is that we have a real problem in this state with retaining teachers in the profession. Many teachers leave, some only after a year or 2 or 3. Many of them leave the profession. They find out it's a lot tougher than they thought. The working conditions are not quite what they thought. And frankly, for a lot of beginning teachers, they're having a really hard time making ends meet. And a lot of them are working second jobs in the evenings and weekends just to pay the bills, because the teacher pay is really pretty poor. We also have a pretty significant number of teachers in the state who are, like me, baby boomer generation, and many of them are retiring. And so we do have teacher shortages, particularly in some areas, both in terms of parts of the state and in terms of fields. So mathematics, science, special education have long been problem areas where we just cannot get enough qualified teachers. But we're starting to see some schools having trouble getting high school English and social studies teachers, which had never been a problem until recently. And again, there are plenty of people in the state who have taught or have been certified to teach, who just decided to pursue other things because the teaching profession sometimes doesn't provide everything they want.
If someone watches this or wakes up in the morning, mid-career age, shall we say,
Right.
and decides that they're finished with whatever their career is, they want to go into the classroom and teach, how do you do that in Arizona?
Actually, we get a lot of people in our programs who are career changers, particularly who want to teach at middle school and high school. And we have a program that we designed really for that group called Teach Arizona, where people who already have a bachelor's degree in some content area can come in, and we have a very intense 12-month program where they become certified to teach. They get a full year of experience in the classroom as well as our courseworks, and they also get a master's degree on top of that. And that program's been going, we've done it for 15 years now. We now have a cohort, we've always run it in Tucson, but we actually have a cohort in the Phoenix area as well, and that program is expanding. And we've had great success with people who decide that their real passion is teaching and they want to do it. And the program has been very successful in helping them get jobs. They all get jobs who want jobs. And we have a very good track record of people staying in the profession because they come in kind of knowing more that that's really what they want to do.
Have you found, as we've seen in other programs at this university and many other universities, that the students you're graduating don't stay in Arizona? They go off to other states, or do most of the new teachers that you turn loose stay here in Arizona?
Many of the teachers that come through our programs, particularly our undergraduate programs, do not stay here, but the main reason is most of them are not from here. So the majority of our Arizona students who are in our program are from the Phoenix area, and many of them go back there, so at least they're still in the state. We also get lots of out-of-state students at this university, and they typically come in and almost always go back to their home state to teach. We also have a lot of competition with our surrounding states because teacher salaries are higher or increasing in every border state around us. And so that's hard to compete with as well.
All right, well, thanks for coming in and talking with us for a few minutes.
Thanks for the invitation.
This is Memorial Day weekend, so we close our show with a trip to Arizona's memorials honoring those who fought in World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Videographer Steve Riggs put this piece together. I'm Christopher Conover. Thanks for tuning in.
Have you seen the one in San Diego?